Every morning before the world starts demanding attention, before notifications light up screens and obligations rush in, there's a quiet moment where the trajectory of the day is decided. Most people don't notice it. High achievers live inside it. The difference isn't intelligence, luck, or even discipline in the traditional sense. It's something subtler, something invisible from the outside. It's the set of mental habits they practice daily, often unconsciously, that shapes how they think, react, decide, and persist. These habits don't look dramatic. They don't feel heroic. But compounded over time, they quietly separate exceptional lives from ordinary ones. High achievers don't wake up motivated every day. That's a myth. What they wake up with is clarity about how they intend to relate to the day ahead. Instead of asking, "How do I feel?" they instinctively ask, "What matters today?" This shift sounds small, but it's profound. Feelings fluctuate. Purpose anchors. By orienting their mind toward relevance instead of emotion, they reduce the power of mood to dictate action. Even on sluggish days, they move forward because their identity is tied to showing up, not to feeling inspired. This habit alone eliminates thousands of internal debates that drain most people before noon. As the day unfolds, high achievers display a distinct relationship with discomfort. Where most people subconsciously avoid it, they notice it. They don't dramatize it, and they don't run from it. Mental resistance becomes a signal rather than a stop sign. When something feels tedious, uncertain, or demanding, they instinctively interpret that sensation as evidence that the task matters. Over time, this rewiring turns friction into a compass. Instead of asking how to make work easier, they ask how to make themselves stronger, sharper, or more capable of handling it. This doesn't mean they enjoy discomfort. It means they no longer fear it. Another quiet habit sits beneath their decision-making. High achievers are exceptionally careful about what they allow into their mental environment. They understand that attention is finite, and they protect it aggressively. They don't consume information randomly. They are selective with news, conversations, social media, and even opinions. Not because they live in a bubble, but because they understand that inputs shape out outputs. If the mind is constantly fed noise, anxiety, outrage, or comparison, clarity becomes impossible. So they curate their mental diet the way athletes curate nutrition, knowing that what enters repeatedly becomes what influences behavior. Throughout the day, they maintain an unusual sense of agency. When something goes wrong, their internal dialogue doesn't spiral into blame, complaint, or helplessness. Instead, it shifts toward ownership. Even when circumstances aren't their fault, they instinctively look for what is within their control. This habit keeps them out of victimhood and inside problem-solving. It doesn't make life fairer, but it makes progress faster. By refusing to outsource responsibility for their emotional state or results, they preserve momentum in situations where others stall. High achievers also practice a deliberate mental simplification. They resist the urge to overcomplicate. When faced with complex challenges, they ask reductive questions. What is the real problem here? What is the one action that would move this forward? What can be ignored safely? This habit prevents overwhelm and decision paralysis. Instead of drowning in options, they prioritize leverage. This mental minimalism doesn't eliminate complexity in the world, but it reduces complexity in their mind, which is where most people lose energy. Another defining habit is how they treat time. High achievers don't experience time as something that happens to them. They experience it as something they allocate. They are deeply aware that every yes contains hidden no's, and they choose accordingly. This awareness sharpens their boundaries. They say no without excessive explanation. They leave situations that drain them. They protect blocks of uninterrupted thinking. This isn't rigidity, it's respect. They respect their future self enough not to waste today's attention. Their inner dialogue is another area of distinction. High achievers don't speak to themselves kindly all the time, but they speak to themselves constructively. When they fail, they don't collapse into self-attack. When they succeed, they don't inflate into arrogance. Their self-talk is oriented toward calibration rather than judgment. They ask what worked, what didn't, and what to adjust. This emotionally neutral analysis allows learning without shame and confidence without delusion. Over time, this creates psychological resilience that looks like confidence from the outside. As pressure builds, their mental habits become even more apparent. Instead of rushing, they slow their thinking. They pause before reacting. They separate urgency from importance. This ability to stay cognitively calm under stress isn't accidental. It's the result of daily practice in noticing emotion without letting them dictate behavior. They don't suppress feelings, but they don't obey them blindly either. This emotional regulation allows them to make clear decisions in moments where others panic. High achievers also carry a long-term perspective into daily actions. Even mundane tasks are framed within a larger narrative of who they are becoming. They don't need constant external validation because their motivation is internally referenced. Progress, not applause, becomes the reward. This reduces dependence on praise and insulates them from criticism. When feedback arrives, they evaluate it for usefulness, not emotional impact. If it helps, they use it. If it doesn't, they discard it without resentment. At the end of the day, their mental habits don't switch off. They reflect, but not obsessively. They review outcomes without replaying regrets. They ask what today taught them and what tomorrow requires. Then they let the day go. This closure prevents mental residue from carrying into sleep, which protects recovery. They understand that rest isn't laziness, it's part of performance. By ending days cleanly, they begin the next with psychological freshness. None of these habits are dramatic on their own. None require talent or privilege. They are choices repeated quietly, daily, often invisibly. That's why most people overlook them. High achievement doesn't come from occasional intensity. It comes from consistent mental alignment. When thoughts, attention, and actions point in the same direction day after day, results eventually follow. If you want to think like a high achiever, don't wait for motivation, confidence, or clarity to arrive. Start with the smallest mental shifts. Notice how you frame discomfort. Pay attention to your self-talk. Protect your attention. Own your reactions. Simplify your thinking. These habits won't change your life overnight, but over months and years, they will quietly rebuild how you experience work, pressure, and progress. The invitation is simple but demanding. Observe your mind tomorrow. Not to judge it, but to train it. Because success isn't built by extraordinary days. It's built by ordinary days, governed by extraordinary mental habits. And the moment you start practicing them deliberately is the moment your trajectory begins to change.